Hello and welcome to another Stellarian Games video. In this episode, we're going to be continuing our Star Wars theme. This time we're going to be making some scatter terrain. Some small scatter terrain that you can use on the tabletop for cover, for line of sight, for objective markers, however you want to use them. Just a bunch of Star Wars themed scatter terrain. These are just made from a variety of different bits and leftover parts of tools and whatnot that I had laying around, and I'll just show you how to kind of put these together, assemble them in some neat constructs, and get them to the tabletop. So let's go to the table and see how this is done. Okay, for this craft, we're going to use some of that cellulose packaging inserts, and we're cutting out some extra pieces that don't quite fit with the rest of the building. I might use the rest of the building and actually make a building, but I'm using some of these spare parts and we'll use those as part of the scatter. Now I'm using a juice lid and a small grid work. It's a round grid work that I found at the craft store, and I'm just going to super glue that to the top of the juice lid. And then I'm going to start on another piece while that is drying, gluing on some brackets for nailing in power cords and some other odds and ends, just gluing that all onto some chipboard. That's kind of going to be the theme for all of this, just making chipboard bases using some of that grid work, gluing that down to the chipboard and making various structures out of it. I'm using wire nuts, I'm using wooden blocks, anything that just seems like it would have kind of a science fiction theme to it. For this one, I'm using a burned out headlamp and gluing that to the chipboard and gluing some plastic to it, some other things around it to give it just kind of an interesting science fiction looking piece. Gluing on some caps, wire nuts, various kinds, just making things look as interesting as possible. Here I'm using one of those wooden craft pieces and some drywall anchors. A lot of drywall anchors attached to make it look like some evaporators or something from Star Wars. I had quite a number of different drywall anchor varieties, so that ended up working really well because they all looked a little bit different from each other, but had sort of the overall same shape to them. Now I'm adding just a little chipboard insert to make it look like it has a concrete pad, and then adding another wire nut as some sort of doohickey on the inside of that, with a drywall anchor, some more wire nuts, and other various things surrounding the piece. Now on all of the chipboard, I went with some white glue and added some sand to give it kind of that Tatooine feel from Star Wars. Sprayed all of those up black, and then going in and giving them all a dark brown coat. Most of it on the ground, some where we use that cellulose packaging, I covered that as well with the brown, and then coming in with that sandy color and dry brushing to give it kind of that earthen sand look. For those packaging and some of the other pieces, I used kind of an off-white. Just dry brushed that as well as I could, and then using a light gray and dry brushing some of that on some of the pieces. I'm hitting that concrete pad to make it look like cement, and adding some color splashes to various pieces, blues, oranges, greens, whatever seemed appropriate to give it a little bit more of a color splash than just drab browns and grays. For the other pieces, adding some dark brown again, kind of leaving those a little bit darker so that'll have a nice kind of rusty undertone. I'm coming into some of that off-white again, trying to really make this look like the Star Wars white, very weathered look. I'm using some of the oranges and other colors to add details to some of the pieces, actual like lettering and small buttons and various details to some of the pieces, just to give it a little bit more life than drab colors. Then I'm using a raw sienna and really kind of hitting a lot of the piece to make it look like rust and corrosion all over the kind of the exposed metal pieces. Then we're hitting it all with a black wash to make it even further dirty and kind of make some of the pieces pop with the textures. So here's the finished product. Lots of just variations using different bits and pieces that I had laying around, but it makes some great scatter terrain to fill up the board and kind of cut down on line of sight. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.